Welcome to another episode of Two Old Men in Chairs. I'm Corrin Strong.
I'm Howard Appel.
So today we are finally going to do The Revolution Will Not Be Televised by Gil Scott-Heron. Howard and I had a little bit of a disagreement about whether we should do this song. I was all for it, but Howard had some reservations.
Well, my reservations will maybe come out once we do our discussion, but I've relented. I think it's a good song because it can be brought into contemporary relevance.
The same way that Masters of War can be reinterpreted today to talk about the masters of the psychological warfare that's going on, I think this one also has a message that is still very, very applicable. This is also in the category of early rap songs too, because this came out in 1970, but he kind of came out of the spoken word tradition, you know, putting poetry over jazz music.
That had been going on in coffee houses for
That
years.
had been going on, you know, probably since the 50s, but he kind of came out of that tradition. And this will throw you for a loop. He's known as the Godfather of Hip Hop, and he's also known as the Black Bob Dylan.
Not possible.
So we'll see. We're big Bob Dylan fans. I was aware of this song early on. I've known this song for 40, 50 years, ever since it came out. But I think it was new to you.
Absolutely was new.
You had a little bit of a shock reaction to it at first because, well, he's got the big afro, and he's fairly militant about black civil rights, but that was the era.
Yeah, and the afro was sort of mandatory in the early 70s.
Oh, sure. Yeah. When we see an image like this, automatically we're thinking Black Panther.
Well, we're thinking, yes, Black Revolution. Yeah, you're right.
Revolutionary Black.
The Black Revolution.
Late 60s, early 70s. And so, I think that's what you reacted to.
Yeah, the stereotype.
But really, I feel like his message was broader than that. That's in there, but there's a lot more in there.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
So that's the basic theme. The revolution will not be televised. And that's true today. The things that are happening that are going to change this world are never going to be on TV. They're going to be underground. People on Telegram, communicating with what's really going on in the world, and they can't make it onto the controlled media.
Pending revolution has nothing to do with escapism.
No, you've got to be an activist. You can't sit and be on heroin, which is Skag, or drink beer, or watch television. None of that is going to get you anywhere. You got to get up out of your chair and go out and march and protest and be active and organize and do all of those things if you want a revolution. Revolutions, you just can't sit in your armchair.
And this is what year, 71?
72, I believe.
72, yeah. And the revolution was really out there. We, as white people, we saw it portrayed, and as black people, they probably thought about it a lot back then. Young ones, anyways.
This is really after the main civil rights movement. The March on Washington, I think, was 63, 64, I can't remember. All the civil rights legislation that was passed under President Johnson in 65, 66.
With a certain awareness, is all we get to do is drink at white drinking fountains. There's a hollowness to the victory. There's really a bigger thing than that when we're talking about the revolution.
Well, obviously there were people that weren't quite satisfied with all of that. They wanted more.
Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from the Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised.
Now, some of those references are going to be a little obscure. But he's talking about politicians of the day,
Yeah.
President Nixon, Vice President
Yeah,
Agnew.
if you're our age, those names are
Yeah,
second nature.
if you're our age, you know all those names. But you can substitute today's names, you know. You could talk about President Biden and Vice President Harris and this one and that one. It wouldn't be that different. Yeah, well, this was still during the Vietnam War era.
Yeah, very much in the Vietnam was intense in the early 70s,
Yeah. But he says it's not going to be, the revolution is not going to be brought to you sponsored by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruption.
Today, people don't even know who Xerox is. You'd have to pick it
No,
up.
but the idea, you know, back in the day, you had these prestigious television shows that were, you know, I think maybe Roots was brought without commercial interruption. You know, I think that might be the reference here, actually.
The Alex Haley thing.
But big television events, back when there was only 3 or 4 channels and everyone all watched the same thing, you know, it was very prestigious if it was brought to you by one company as a sponsor and no commercials. And that was a thing. I don't know if they even do that anymore.
To eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary, the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother.
So there he's making fun of commercial slogans.
Well, TV icons, Steve McQueen and even Bullwinkle, the cartoon character. And, you know, the cosmetic, the commercials, how important it is in your life to look
5 pounds thinner.
Yes. It's what he's talking about isn't this world, although I think when he's singing it, he realizes that most people's world is this TV world he's singing of.
Yeah, but he's trying to wake him up from that.
Absolutely.
He's like, hey, you know, don't worry if you're 5 pounds thinner. You know, think about the real issues. And we have that same thing going on today. We've got so many people distracted on social media and video games and TikTok with things that really don't matter.
Yes, it's a form of escapism.
It's escapism. And it's a great way to control the masses. If they're busy playing their video game or watching the TikTok, they're not going to be revolutionaries. They're not going to realize they're getting screwed.
You can remove their entire roster of constitutional rights, and they're not even going to notice.
Yeah, and they've been doing a damn good job of that.
The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised.
See, even back then.
I mean, Willie Mays was a true black icon as center fielder for the New York Giants by San Francisco Giants by then. But
yeah, and of course he was famous for that one catch where he was running towards the center field fence and just picked the ball out of nowhere. Yeah. But it's funny, the one thing I might disagree with, there probably will be televised of people with the stolen TV and
shopping
carts. In fact, I'll make a prediction. That'll probably be happening tonight because of the Roe v. Wade. I think they've been gearing up for more riots. That's the one thing we've been disagreeing.
At 8:32 on report from 29 districts, the revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion.
Again, if you don't know who Roy Wilkins and the other fellows, I forgot already, they were civil rights leaders of the time. So he's attacking that civil rights industry that we talked about earlier. He's, from his radical point of view, he sees through those civil rights leaders.
The same with the image of pig cops shooting black people.
There's another one where we have to disagree because that will be shown on television over and over and over and over again.
To the black culture. I mean, the fact that cops hate black people is so imbued. It isn't just a small thing. It's everything. And
it's mainly propaganda is what it is. If you look at the actual numbers, of black people shot and killed by police. It's very small, and it's comparable to the number of white people shot and killed by police. But those are never going to be televised. So we could turn this song around and say, you know, the pictures of white people shot by police is not going to be televised.
The point he's making still, though, is that, you know, the escapist life and the revolution are two separate things.
Yeah.
In a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised.
By the way, maybe most people have heard of those shows or seen them on reruns. You know, those were shows that were popular 50 years ago. Really corny type sitcoms.
White shows too.
White shows.
White
shows.
Especially.
But it's interesting that he uses the word brother a couple times. So he's actually, this song is actually addressed to his black brothers. He's telling them, you guys have to wake up. You guys have to realize that the revolution is not going to be televised. You have to stop watching the stupid television shows and these stupid commercials.
And probably the most watched of what he mentioned was Search for Tomorrow, because that was what we call a daytime soap opera watched by untold thousands of housewives who were
millions.
And the plot went on and on and on.
Well, they all did. I mean, I got hooked in the General Hospital.
But it was
for about
very
5
much.
years. Back in these days, in the 70s, you know, there was a couple shows that had black characters, like the Jeffersons and Archie Bunker.
Well,
had a black character.
And Jefferson
Sanford and Sons.
were shown as upscale. Sanford and Sons, no. The Jeffersons were upscale, yeah.
It's nothing like today, where there's whole networks devoted to black programming
and I mean,
black sitcoms.
And you know, in a sense, that's maybe a manifestation of the revolution he talked about. Blacks finally have their place in the entertainment industry, as far as that goes.
Black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry R. women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Key, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised.
Hold on there, Gil. You're stepping on a few of our toes because we're big fans of Johnny Cash and Glenn Campbell.
Well, you know, my mom was the biggest fan of Engelbert Humperdinck there ever was.
Yeah, not so much. But I think the reason he mentioned those is that those were performers who had...
Very white.
But they had television shows.
Yeah.
Remember Johnny Cash had a show?
Yeah.
Glenn Campbell had a show? Mm-hmm. I don't know if Engelbert ever had a show. He probably did.
Plenty of specials if he didn't have a show.
Yeah. So those were artists, and it's funny, he mentioned Jim Webb. It won't be written by Jim Webb. That's a pretty obscure reference.
Well, Jim Webb wrote a lot of Glenn Campbell songs, Wichita Lineman, for instance.
I know that, but how many people know who the songwriters are on these songs? That's pretty obscure.
Yeah, but Jim Webb wrote white songs for white
He wrote
performers.
MacArthur Park.
That's right.
Which we're going to do one day. As long as we do the Waylon Jennings version, I'll do it any day.
One thing this reminds me of is his reciting all these things, what television was like in the early 70s. It truly was a vast wasteland, and that's what it was called by critics.
Actually, the fellow who called it a vast wasteland was the chairman of the FCC. My dad used to call it the boob tube.
Yeah.
You know, only boobs would sit and watch this junk. And that's still true. I don't watch television. I haven't watched in over a year.
On the rare earth, the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat.
All of those were corporate slogans, you know, things go better with coke. Hertz will put you in the driver's. You know, we grew up with that type of propaganda, you know. We could probably sing the jingles to them. You know, things are so much more fragmented these days. You know, you don't have the 3 networks and everybody watching, you know, tens of millions of people all watching the same show every week.
Easier target for him back then, but it's still an easy target. I mean, when you look at people's obsession with their cell phones.
The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Okay, so Howard, you reassessed this song.
Well, I like it, but I think going back to my reasons for hesitating was, I'm thinking this revolution that he's speaking of here, that Gil Scott-Heron is speaking of, how successful was it? We can look back at it now, 50 years, in a perspective of 50 years. Did this revolution accomplish much of anything, really? We're still escapists. Maybe it didn't. We're all still escapists, black and white people.
Yeah, there's not much progress there, despite his best effort to wake people up. But considering that he was addressing it to his black brothers, perhaps, it had an effect there.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a lot. As we all matured, there was a loss of our idealism and our thinking in that manner. I think it happened to blacks as well as whites. We lost those ideals and dreams that we thought might be manifest in our.
Well, it kind of reminds me of John Lennon's song "Revolution," and he goes, "If you're going to be carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anyone anyhow." The radical message is hopefully never going to be ultimately successful.
But I didn't think his message was radical here. That he played off TV worked really well. I mean, this revolution was supposed to change the basic structure of our lives.
He never really explained what the revolution was. I guess it was understood that the revolution was going to bring black power.
Back in the early 70s, we all spent our evenings with a TV set, hours and hours every day. After the revolution, I think he was saying we'd be doing something better with our time.
Yeah, I mean, I was addicted. I watched All in the Family every week. I watched the Jeffersons. I watched Sanford and Son and Bob Newhart and dozens of other shows probably. That's what we did. We wasted our youth.
The evenings very much, and our parents, sometimes more so addicted than us because they grew up without television, and it was such a great thing for them to have in the evening.
Sunday night was family night. We'd all get in the living room and watch Disney and
Ed Sullivan's on Sunday.
And Ed Sullivan and the Beatles, But during the week, I didn't see my parents watching that much television.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, are we going to be any more successful in the next 50 years?
One would hope so, but
the trends are not looking good.
It gives you reason to be pessimistic because there was never higher hopes than in those years, those late 60s, early 70s years. There was never higher hope for a better world. And today there isn't that hope.
Today the hope is being beaten down so much. I think it's what we're trying to do here with our little YouTube channel and what hundreds of other people are doing with their channels is keeping the message of hope alive. I just want to say one thing before we go about the actual music because it was very funky.
Charlie Mingus type stuff.
Yeah, well, a very good drum beat, and then that flute was crazy. That flute was really, almost like a second lead to the song. So I think that really helped, and to package the message, to have that really jazzy background to it.
And to give him credit, I mean, if you look at the lyrical aspect of it, there's a rhythmic structure to his lines too.
Well, this is why I say it's a rap.
It's a rap maybe without the beat so much as jazz music rather than a steady, mechanical beat.
He's flowing, he's singing bars is what he's doing.